May I welcome you all. This is now the third big plastics debate. So we've had a really good time doing this, and they have developed. It's an interesting now because we're now up to running it over 2 afternoons. So part 1 today consists of 2 parts. We're going to have the Eco Pack competition, which I'll talk about in a minute. We're going to have that in a moment. And afterwards, we are having a debate. But it's not like the usual thing. This is the debates you used to have at school and at university. We are talking about a properly constructed debate for which I'm going to ask you at the time to forget about all the other junk in your mind and just listen to the speakers and decide which way you're going to vote on the quality of the speakers. But first of all, it's this Eco Pack challenge, which I believe, and I know I saw about 28 entries. They have been whittled down to the top 6. The top 6 have their moment. They have 5 minutes. 5 minutes only, and I hope there is a clock, and that's it. So if they blow it, they blow it. If they stumble over their slides, bad day. So once we're finished, once they've done, the judges, which I'm now going to introduce, we have Kevin Weiss from Marks & Spencer, and we have Paul Jenkins from the Pack Hub. So a big round for them. And I will be joining them, and I tell you what, don't take any prisoners, right? So nor should you either. So let's get on with this one. We're going to introduce first rapid action packaging. That will be Ben. Are you around? Rapid action packaging. Please come to oh, you're there. Right. It wouldn't be fair to start you now. So take it away. I think we'll let it start once they actually reach the lectern. That's only fair. Who's got a watch? Is it me? Oh, yes, this is going to be difficult.
Good afternoon, audience. Ben Ely from Rapid Action Packaging, Head of Food Service there, and introducing our range, Precious Planet. Let's work out how to use this. So first of all, just about the materials that we're using for Precious Planet. The board that we're using is made purely from agricultural waste. So waste from crops such as wheat and rice, sugarcane. When they harvest the food, only 20% of the crop is used for food. The other 80% is waste, leaves and stems. It's just thrown away. We've harvested that waste product and made it into board for food packaging. Then we use a biofilm, which is made from wood pulp, and it also comes from a managed plantations, so it's actually FSC accredited. We did a life assessment study that was conducted by the IVAM University of Amsterdam. And using this particular board provides an environmental saving of 47% compared to FSC board that's based from wood fibres, and a 24% environmental saving when using recycled paper. The board and the biofilm are 100% compostable, according to the EN 13432. The biofilm is also suitable for home composting and also anaerobic digestion. If compostability is not a stream that can be used, then the board can also be recycled. For packs like this where the film is laminated to the board, under current guidelines that can be classed as widely recycled and will be collected as waste in the board stream. On packs where it's a separate bag and film, the products can simply be separated. That can be recycled and that can be discarded where there is no compostable stream. Onto the range then. What we've done is we've created 2 sizes of sandwich wedges, day fresh sandwich wedges, 2 sizes of salad trays, and a number of hand wraps that can be used for wraps, baguettes, and sandwiches. Basically all targeting the food service sector, which is under increasing pressure from the media and consumers to reduce single-use plastic. So in summary, ladies and gentlemen, we've created a range that's made from board using an existing waste product. The materials are entirely plant-based, and the options are there at the end of life, whether recycling or composting or even home composting. And finally, a full range is now available. So please come and see us on stand E25 and we can show you the range in full. Thank you very much.
Well, congratulations, Ben, because you managed to do that in 3.5 minutes. But, you know, that's good sales training for you, isn't it? So our next person on the stage, or organisation on the stage, is Percol Coffee. Do we have Percol Coffee? Great. We won't start it until you're ready.
Okay.
Could you?
The big plastic debate will be streamed on the big TV screens around the show, as well as at EcoPack.
Sorry.
It's not going on the screen.
Wait a minute.
Is there some tech support?
Right, we promise we won't start it, but do we have a doctor in the house? Yeah, but do we have anybody doing the AV? Right.
Yeah,
Boom, boom. I like it. Right. Okay, your time starts.
Thank you. The UK produces over 100 million packs of coffee each year, all of which are non-recyclable. At Percol Coffee, we want to be the most ethical and sustainable coffee brand in the UK. My name is Ollie Richmond. I'm the Trade and MPD Manager at Percol Coffee, and I'm going to talk you through what we think is the best solution to combat this problem. So I'm going to talk you through the why, the challenge, the solution, and the mission. So first of all, the why. Humans have created 8.3 billion tonnes of plastic, of which 6.3 billion tonnes is now waste, and only 9% of that has been recycled. If current trends continue, there'll be over 12 billion tonnes of plastic in landfill or in our ecosystems. Now, we've all seen Blue Planet 2 and the effects that this is having on our oceans as well. 8 million tonnes of plastic enter the ocean each year, which is about a garbage truck being dumped in every minute. And the Ellen MacArthur Foundation predict that there could be more plastic than fish in the sea by 2050. But what does this look like for the coffee industry? Now, there's a big issue with disposable cups, with less than 1% getting recycled, as lots of people have highlighted. But as a retail coffee brand, we want to look at what does this look like on the shelves in the supermarkets. And as I said, over 100 million packs are being produced each year, which are non-recyclable. So the challenge. Coffee is really demanding. It needs to be protected from oxygen and moisture. And they say as soon as you open coffee, you lose 60% of the freshness within the first 15 minutes. It needs to be strong enough to withstand shipping and automated packing lines. And it needs to allow the CO2 to degas as well. And the industry standard here is for a mixed material, multi-laminate foil, which is non-recyclable. But why is it non-recyclable? There's mixed polymers in here and mixed materials which are difficult to separate and recycle. There's a lack of large sorting and recycling facilities in the UK to do this. But ultimately, if it was recyclable, flexibles have a really low recycling value. And to create a true circular economy for this product is really difficult, because you can't use post-consumer plastic due to food contact compliance. So the solution. We've launched the world's first plastic-free home compostable packs for coffee. and we've launched it across 7 SKUs. We've worked with Parkside on developing this foil. So why have we choose home compostable? So compostable is sustainable, so we're using natural materials such as plant-based and eucalyptus wood pulp, reducing the reliance on petrochemicals. It's a true cradle-to-cradle solution, so we're returning this pack back to nature after its use. And as I said, we're reducing our reliance on multi-layer laminates that can't be recycled. So we've looked at the whole product life cycle of our packaging and our coffee. So as I said, we're using plant-based materials which are derived from paper and eucalyptus wood pulp. And it contains no conventional plastics such as PET, OPP and PE. For our coffee, we're using organic and fair trade, so we're looking after our farmers and the environments in which it's grown. For production, the packaging is produced in the UK and it's roasted in the UK as well, so we're reducing our transport miles. And for end of life, as I said, it's home compostable, so it'll break down in 26 weeks in your home compost bin or 12 weeks in your industrial composting facilities. And once turned into compost, it can be used as a soil improver. And across this whole process and the whole life cycle, we're carbon neutral certified from farm to factory to shelf. And we use the plastic-free trust mark to communicate this to consumers. We're proud to be the first coffee brand to have this mark on our packaging. And this says that our packaging does not add to the plastic problem and the plastic pollution. The mission, to become the most ethical and sustainable coffee brand. And we want to do our bit to offer a more sustainable alternative to those 100 million packs of non-recyclable packs that go into the UK each year. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. Again, within time. Can we have number 3, which is Semco? Where is Semco these days? There you are. Welcome. I think you're up there, aren't you?
Can I have your help for my presentation?
Oh God, AV man needed to have help with presentation, please. Sorry, I thought they were all looped. That was rather blasé. Yeah, at least they've paid for it. Sorry? They've paid for it, which is something.
And just here. What?
Okay. Thank you. Right, your time starts now.
Okay.
Sorry.
So, hello everybody. My name is Venel Régnier, and I'm the owner and CEO from Semco, a Monegasque company based in Monaco, and created in 1961, expert in the field of packaging. Sorry, first of all, for my French accent. I will try to do my best. So, I will present to you my innovation. This is Sampack. Sampack is a flexible conical pouch able to stand up or down. This original ergonomic packaging is created in order to be a solution about the problem of the waste and the plastic pollution in the seas. This packaging can contain all kind of product, liquid, pastry product, semi-pastry and powder. It's created for all kind of sector, cosmetics, food, industry, and so on. In Semco, we want to imagine some new kind of packaging. I bought this company last 6 years, and our aims was to imagine new kind of packaging, but also new kind of raw material. So the first aims to Semco was to be eco-responsible, to be 100% eco-responsible, but also to offer an alternative compared to traditional packaging. Because in plastic packaging, it's always the same thing. It's always bottle, it's always dye pack, it's always tube, always the same thing. And my aims was to keep the same advantage of the current packaging, but also try to find solution. Find solution of the tube, for example. Every woman at the end of the month cut the tube in order to keep the product. Trying a solution about the problem of the random distribution with a plastic bottle, and the fact that the dye pack, it's cool, but when it's empty, it's fall down. So I explain Sampack is a perfect mix between the bottle, the tubes, the dye pack, and the chair pack. Sampack is very, very simple because it's composed with a film. It's a flexible conical pouch, composed with and sealed with a spout and an accessories. This packaging, as I explained, is completely recyclable. There are 4 main keys. It's completely responsible. We have developed with some of our suppliers and some of partners one solution to be full recyclable in PE with the Nova chemical pattern, and also in full PP. I will explain you, but if you compare with the traditional packaging, if you compare with a plastic bottle, for example, a plastic ketchup bottle, the weight is approximately 25 grams. Sampack is always only between 5 and 7 grams. If you compare with a dye pack, we use until 50% of raw material less. In terms of economic and ergonomic, the aims for also all the consumer, particular or professional, it's to now use until the last drop. It's more important because you want actually to consume exactly what we paid. And it's also more important for a professional because a professional wants to sell the product. The quantity that can lose is some margin. We are able to propose each kind of protection with different kind of barrier, but it's also original because you have a maximum visibility on the shelf play, and it's also completely customizable because you can choose the choose of film if you want to have softness of rigidity, if you want to have different kind of printing, digital printing or helio, depending on the volume, and you can choose a large choice of color in order to adapt different kind of accessories. I explained that now we can propose a packaging with the best resolution.
You have to wrap it up. Go on, say 20 seconds. Go on, we'll give you. Go on, quick, quick.
To be lighter and consume less raw material, optimize the space, to be ultra compressible in order to keep the product in the trash in order to do not finish in the seas.
Right, I'm afraid we will
and
have
last point,
go on.
To be completely 100 eco-responsible. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, and well done. I think in the spirit of fairness, we're going to try and keep them all the same length where we can, but that was fantastic. Now, I think we have a change in the order. No, I've got a feeling, is it Flexi Hex next? I got a bit confused on my order. Oh, sorry, no. It's got, Flexi Hex. Do we have them? Oh, you are there. Sorry, God blimey. Aye. And can we restart, Kevin, when you're ready? Just tell you when. Let them get the presentation. Are you okay on your presentation, or you don't need slides, do you?
No, we have got some actually. Yeah.
Are they on there, or? Sorry, you may as well live up here. Save your shoes. I might have got the order slightly wrong. Doesn't matter. They've changed it. Right.
Okay, cool. What's the best way of moving? Is just using arrows.
Okay, your time will start now. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. So we are Flexi Hex. We are a business which has been going about a year, looking at innovative packaging solution to potentially replace existing plastic solutions. We're both the company was started by myself and also my twin brother Will. We're both lifelong sort of surfers and have been acutely aware of kind of the growing amount of plastic pollution in the marine environment. The environment was a very different place 30 years ago when I started surfing to what it's looking like now, and that is mainly down to plastics and the sort of physical effects on that environment. We wanted to think about solutions around packaging. The other thing, being surfers, one of the obviously primary products within the surfing market is a surfboard, and we wanted to look at solutions around packaging surfboards. Currently, boards are packaged in bubble wrap, again a plastic material, and you've got boards which are up to sort of £1,000 each, arriving at the consumer in a bit of cardboard and bubble wrap in a box. It's a good material, bubble wrap. It's obviously strong, robust, and offers protection. But we wanted to come up with solutions around using other materials which could potentially be recycled, easily recycled, and also potentially reusable, and look at that circular economy of how reducing waste. The invention we came up with is called Flexi Hex. So it's basically 100% recycled paper-based product made up of honeycomb paper material with a flexible cardboard rails, which basically form around objects. The material, again, the product itself was developed primarily for the board sports market, looking at surfboards, snowboards, windsurfers, and it's a very adaptable system. The product itself it's effectively a sleeve which can just be opened up to kind of hold products. The paper, again, the product itself can be cut down to any size. We have a number of different sort of product types as well, ranging from small to large to cater for different product sizes and volumes. The idea, again, was actually stemmed from looking at how fruit used to be packaged in the sort of foam meshes, and you can see how that sort of kind of a sort of organic kind of shape is being sort of influenced in the design. What we found was we're both again. Sorry, I come back now. Within the surf industry, we're sort of we're selling both globally. We're selling in the US, in Australia. We're selling throughout Europe with a number of distributors. But what we realised is there are much larger applications for this product. So we wanted to explore that, and we knew that at the very beginning. Obviously, the size of these industries, the board sport industry is a large industry, but when you start looking at the drinks industry and the industrial industry, then it starts becoming an interesting product and a possible interesting product solution for all these industries. So we recently launched a product for the drinks market, using exactly the same principles and the product type. You can see how the actual product forms over the bottle, and by compressing the top, actually holds up to 95% of the existing bottle types on the market today. And we're currently developing an e-commerce solution as well. So we have an insert and a box. So within a few seconds, a bottle can be packed and ready to be sent out. We have an international patent. We have international patent pending on the design. We have trademark in the US, Australia, China, Europe. We've developed this product for the drinks market. We also for working with a number of companies in the wine and champagne industry, and also looking at homeware as well, the industrial sector, a massive market which we want to explore further in ceramics, lighting. We think that the product has huge potential, and the key is 100% recycled paper and is 100% recyclable, so it fits that circular economy. Thank you.
Well, thank you very, very much indeed. I actually thought we were going to be surfing on that one there, actually, but first. Now we have Gason Wines. Do we have you? Fine. Do you have a presentation to stick in there? Yeah. You do. So you won't need this packaging to put that bottle in.
Working?
Yep.
Hiya, I'm Ali from Gason Wines, the flat wine bottle people, and I'm here to pitch to win the EcoPack Challenge. The world is warming at an alarming rate. The IPCC report released in October 2018 shows that we are fast approaching a climate catastrophe. M&S addressed this in their Plan A through the intention to reduce their CO2 emissions by 13.3 billion by 2030. Kevin, from Marks and Spencer's himself and one of our judges today, mentioned on Twitter, on LinkedIn even, recently, the importance of using the right materials responsibly in order to help mitigate against climate change. However, in the wine industry, we've been using a 19th century bottle in a 21st century world. Round glass bottles are not fit for purpose in a wine of e-commerce, in a wine of online sales, and a world of complex logistics, and most importantly, a world of climate change. Welcome to the 21st century wine bottle. We use plastics responsibly in an innovative, novel shape to reduce CO2 emissions across the entire supply chain. Most importantly, the bottles look beautiful, which means we respect the tradition and heritage of the wine industry and connect with the consumer emotionally. The bottles are made from 100% recycled PET. This means we put plastic that's already in circulation back to good use, helping fund its collection and helping prevent plastic ending up as waste in landfill or litter in our environment. The bottles are 87% lighter because we use the 100% recycled PCR PET. 87% lighter than round glass bottles, that is. This, in turn, has significant savings throughout the logistics change in CO2 emissions. If you were to extrapolate figures from wrap, the bottle could, on weight alone, the bottle could save over 500 grams of CO2 emissions per bottle. The bottles are also 100% recyclable. We use a plastic cap and specially selected labels to ensure this because it's fundamental to our business. However, at a stage with the plastic debate about to happen, I think it's also important that a change in shape can make significant differences in packaging and its effect on the environment. By going flat, we save 40% spatially smaller than round glass bottles. By innovating in our primary packaging to make it more spatially efficient, we're able to use secondary packaging which then massively amplifies the benefits of a flat bottle. This was a 10 flat bottle case which we have launched today. This flat bottle case increases the amount of wine we can put on a pallet by 2.3 times. It also reduces CO2 emissions by 150% as well as logistics costs. If I was to use the example from M&S, from their 13 million bottles which went into the Dine-In for Two meal deal in 2016, That would mean if they went flat using our bottles, they would take 667 HGVs off the road and save a ton of CO2 per kilometre those lorries travel. Interestingly, a bottle which is better used for home delivery works perfectly in an environment where likes of M&S and Ocado are teaming up to better improve their home delivery supply. In 2018, we were the runner-up in the Sustainability Awards alongside M&S for our Best Practice Award. We want to work with you now. We have a product, we have the ability to go to market with you and change wine packaging for the better and help mitigate against the grotesque carbon footprint of round glass bottles. Thank you very much. That is me done. I'll be stood over there and my colleague is over there. Speak to me later.
Great timing. Very good. There we are. So thank you very much for keeping well in time. Very good. So we have one more left, which is the Sherwood Group, who is... Oh, you're there. God, I see you everywhere. Pure code. Right. Oh, yeah.
That's okay, if it's next, it's fine.
Start, please.
Okay, thank you, Martin. Good afternoon, everybody. Slightly different presentation format than I was expecting, so my marketing manager said it was going to be more one-on-one, so slightly different format, so we'll have a go and we'll run with it, huh? I'm here to talk about Puracoat today. What is Puracoat? Well, it's the Sherwood Group's aqueous barrier coating, and effectively what that is, it can be applied to any food grade board in line at our Nottingham plant, and we feel it has a real benefit and can be a real contrast to other options that you can get out there in terms of PE and other barrier boards out there in the market. Effectively, Puracoat has got some heritage going back to 2010. Get a bit close to the mic, the gentleman's saying. Puracoat's got a heritage going back to 2010 when it came into the market. It won a Sampack award in terms of a sandwich pack where it was placed with a replacement to PE. I think since 2010, obviously there's been a lot of other traction in the market and people have got more and more interested in other options as opposed to plasticized film linked to different products. And we've basically taken that and gained some traction in terms of developing it and seeing where we could take it. I think the most interesting point was in 2018, a lot of the brand owners and retailers were asking us if we could get some third-party accreditation for the claims that we were making for Puracoat over PE and other products. So what we did, we worked very closely with Pyra, and at that time we presented them with a number of different boards with our Puracoat product on the clay surface and also on the reverse of the board, and we wanted to get an understanding from them exactly what kit level rating we could achieve, kit level being one of the industry standards for grease and moisture resistance. So when we trialled all these boards or these different options of boards, Pura actually achieved a kit 12 rating, and that was from an independent party of Pyra, which was terrific for us because it gave a third-party rubber stamp of approval to the type of product that it was. I think some of the features and benefits probably worthwhile talking through. As I've mentioned, it can be applied directly to any food-grade board. So for us, because it's done in-house, that gives us quite good options in terms of the materials that we can put it on. In terms of the lead times of those materials can be shorter than if we were trying to source PE or other barrier boards because we're doing it point in-house. We can also offer different levels of application of Pura, so it's not just a one catch-all position. We can put more than one coating down at a particular time, so it isn't just a case of one fit would suit all the products out there. Some products will want to migrate their substances at quicker rates than others. So for example, we've tried it with crisp product, and that's quite a heavy leaching product, so we used a double application on that product. But again, we can just apply single product or single layers of Pura coat, so we can match up the commercial expectations and the barrier coating layers to what the actual product might need out in the market. I think importantly, because it's basically it's a water-based product, an aqueous product, it doesn't affect the recycling stream at all. So it doesn't have to be separated from a product like a PE coating. It can fully biodegrade and be recyclable in the whole product life cycle. In terms of what it's suitable for, we've had most success in terms of the ambient and chilled market, but it can be used with frozen product down to -20, and it can actually be microwavable if we link it in with the correct boards. I skipped a slide there basically, but some of those there were some of the applications that we used it for. Mostly you can see they were ambient or chilled products that were there. A couple of quick case studies. Booths used this in terms of utilising it in coordination with their tortilla wraps. Previously it was on a PE coated board, but this linked with a biodegradable window patch meant that they could convert it to something that was biodegradable through the whole stream in terms of the board not separating out from a plastic and the window being actually PLA. A fairly recent one, which is a Mexican-based restaurant.
You to wrap up if you can in a few seconds.
In
Sorry.
essence, that's okay. In essence, it's a hot
Close
food
the
product, so it can actually contain hot food as well in terms of its productability. Was that a bit, Martin, or can I put a teaser in?
Just
with,
one close and close the sale.
Close the sale. Well, there's a teaser to Kevin. We've actually done some testing as well in line with some M&S products, particularly in the M&S cafe area.
Right.
And we think in terms of some of the board and the product coatings that we can put on there, we've got an ability that will give a competitive advantage for a recycled product with the M&S cafe.
Right,
lines.
and there you are. And the guillotine has just slashed your head off. Right, thank you. Now, I've got to say, that was absolutely excellent. 6 smashing presentations, and of which some of them did keep to time, which was marvellous. We need to judge this now. So could you excuse us, and we'll, for a few minutes, look upon it as an opportunity for more networking, and we'll be back. Thank you.
Last one, I just knew there's no way he was going to stick to 5 minutes.
The 3 judges, we've spent hours deliberating and we've come to a decision. We're taking into account probably 3 things, one of which is the sustainability, because that is the brief. But let's not forget we're all in packaging, so let's think, does this make good packaging? Fitness for purpose, all the standard stuff we were taught many, many years ago. And the final thing, when it comes to innovation, as opposed to invention, lots of inventions, but they don't necessarily make the grade. Innovation is also about whether we believe there will be some commercial success. So having put that all together, we are going to have a highly commended, and very pleased to announce the highly commended is Rapid Action Packaging. Well done. And that just leaves us to announce the winner. And the winner is Flexi Hex. Well done. Can we give, there we go.
Thank you very much.
Do you want to quickly say 10 words while you're pleased? Go on.
We are
Oscars.
hugely privileged to receive this, and we want to change the world of packaging. Thank you.
And He didn't remember his children, he didn't remember, but never mind, it's fine. Very, very good. So can I just say, look, I think for everybody, unless there's anything you want to add, Kevin or Paul. Can you
Nope. Just one thing, it just shows you that actually if you design sustainability, it can be really cool. You don't have to be boring to do it.
Anything else? So look, thank you. I think we'll thank you, the audience, for your patience. Thank you to all six for preparing that and mostly keeping to time, which is a very good discipline. So a big hand to everybody. Thank you. Led by Jane over here, and we'll talk about that a little bit more at the end. We talked about the idea of having a debate, and then we made the leap to thinking about the sorts of debates we had at school and at college and so on, which were much more formalized with a proposer and a seconder. And I'm hoping, I mean, me as chairman, I think those who know me, as I run the Food Service Packaging Association, may have heard some of my views about plastics and so on. But I am genuinely going to endeavor to be 100% neutral, okay? And if I'm not, tell me I'm not, okay? Because this is how it should be done. I really want you, and I beg you, just to listen to the quality of what you hear and see whether it moves you, changes your opinion. That is what today is about. And it's an interesting way of doing it. Let's hope we maybe even get a couple of rows and so on. Now, for some, let's face it, you know, the concerns about plastic strike at the very heart of packaging, and it strikes at all the great work which is done on food protection. For others, it's a blight on the environment and all those who inhabit it. Today's motion asks you to decide whether you believe whatever society may say about plastic, with the media and everything and a certain program, Mark II, which was referenced, it's saying, despite that, plastic will always be essential, will be an absolute essential in us living our lives and running our economy. And that is at the heart of the debate. The debate is this House believes plastic packaging will always be fundamental to our everyday lives. Now, we have in favor, we have David Baker, who is from RPC. We have Margaret Bates from the University of Northampton. And we have Barry Turner, the British Plastics Federation. They are speaking for the motion. Against the motion, we have Sian Sutherland from Plastic Planet. We have Tony Breton from Novamont. And we have Ian Schofield, who I hope you remember from the debate we had last year, from Iceland. So a big welcome, come on. I say this because it could be quite intimidating, this. So we've got some rules here. Okay, there'll be a 5-minute presentation from the proposer, and then the other team is allowed to make a very brief challenge, not a speech, remember, a brief challenge, and the proposers can then between them will have 2 minutes to respond. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the person who made it in the first place, be the person best placed to answer the question. We will then alternate 4 against, 4 against, 4 against, and then it'll be your turn. 15 minutes from the audience. I will warn you now, if you're thinking of a question, please make it brief. We're not looking for statements from the floor. Absolutely not. So we have just from your team, am I right in saying David Baker from RPC is going to open the batting?
Hello, everybody. I have to say that when I came here this morning, I wasn't going to do this, so I've had loads of time to prepare, and these are my notes. However, I am in favour. I am in favour of the motion that this House believes plastic packaging will always be fundamental to our everyday lives, mainly because I live in the 21st century. Now, I can say that with some confidence because I know what the date is, but also I'm also old enough to remember what it was like living in the 20th century when there wasn't as much plastic around as there is today. And when I was a lad, my mum went shopping every day to a corner shop, and she bought stuff that was wrapped in greaseproof paper and put in paper bags and weighed out and all the rest of it. But the key to that is in those days that she had to go shopping every day. And what she bought that day, fresh, had to be used that day, otherwise it got thrown away. Times moved on since then, and we now live in a society where if I was growing up today, my mum probably wouldn't be able to go shopping every day. So we have become a convenient society. And whether we have asked for convenience, we've certainly got convenience, and we can now go shopping and we can buy products that we need only buy certain products once a week, twice a week, once a month, and they stay in good condition, and when we get them home, we take them home, we open the packaging, and they're in good condition, and they're fresh, and they're safe, and they're not contaminated, and we can use them. We also have, in this 21st century, choice. We have choice. We can buy strawberries all year round. When I was a lad, you could only buy strawberries in June, because that's the only season that they were. And we've got used to having a wide choice of products. And most of our food, let's remember, an awful lot of our food is imported. So to get it to the shop and then to your house and then for you to use it in good condition requires plastic packaging. It's lightweight, it does all the things, it creates safety, it's hygienic, and it certainly preserves food. Now, without plastic packaging, and the reason I think plastic packaging's here today is that plastic packaging does all these things, it does them very well, and that's why there's so much of it, and even I would say there's probably too much of it, but there is a place for plastic packaging and always will be, because it is preserving food, keeping it fresher for longer, avoiding food waste. Food waste, as we all know, is a massive problem. It's a huge problem in the world, and it creates 10 times the amount of carbon of the packaging that is around that food, and therefore we can't afford to keep wasting food with a growing population in this planet. We need to preserve food. We need to have food safety. We need to have hygiene standards, and plastic packaging delivers all those things. Now, if we say, okay, well, you can use alternatives. Yes, you can use alternatives. Alternatives also, you have to do something with those alternatives after you've used them, and quite often the alternative isn't as effective as the plastic. It'll be heavier, it'll be more carbon intensive to produce. It will perhaps be less safe. It might run the risk of shattering or something of that nature. So let's, oh dear, I seem to have done something. No, I just have to say that plastic packaging is here to stay because it's very good at what it does, and it does it very effectively, and we all benefit from it. Let's be honest. We all like the idea of having food that we can rely on, and for me, it's just an enabler to enable us to live in the society in which we have become in the 21st century. One last thing in my last 45 seconds. A major retailer, who shall remain nameless, did say that ahead of Brexit, first mention of the B word, ahead of Brexit, they have been stock building foodstuffs, imported foodstuffs, just in case there's a hard Brexit and there's problems with the ports. And they said, thank God for plastic. Because if it wasn't for plastic packaging, they wouldn't be able to build all that stock so that we could have it in case there's a hard Brexit. And on that note, I'll finish.
Excellent. Thank you, and amazing timing. Right, we have an opportunity now for the against team to ask a very brief question, and the question is?
Who is going to compromise food safety?
Okay, 2 minutes to start. No, hang on. That's not asking me.
I'll ask the
I
question
mean,
again. So the question is, we've now got alternatives. Who is going to, of any kind, who is going to question food safety? Are we going to put food safety, in other words, at risk by not having plastics?
Someone take it away?
I don't think any responsible person would indeed put food risk above the choice of packaging. I think the issue is which materials offer the most food safety, and I think that's perhaps the issue that David was making.
But the other thing to bear in mind is, although it might not impact on food safety, it's quite likely to have an impact on food availability. And unfortunately, in the olden days, people used to buy seasonal and local, and they don't. They want things all year round, and we need to look at the packaging that's best to bring that to us.
Are you done, or any more? Right, okay, we'll pause on that one. And now we're going to have, speaking against, who have we got coming up first? We have Ian Schofield from Iceland.
So as you know, we've pledged to remove plastics over the next 5 years to alternatives. And today, we now have alternatives to every one of those materials. We can do it today. And the interesting thing is, I just mentioned about food safety there and lightweighting. All those things are absolutely critical to us all in our everyday jobs when we're launching products. We have to lightweight. We have to do shelf life. You know what? And the consumer changes quickly. They do want the corner shop now. They do want convenience. Equally, they do want strawberries coming from South Africa all year round. Who's going to change that? I'm not. I'm going to give the consumers what they want by not using plastics. That's absolutely critical to this debate, because there are alternatives, and we've got them today. Now, there are issues with that. There is a cost issue right now of me moving to all those alternatives. Those who saw me earlier, it's absolutely critical that we get over those boundaries. And as we develop these new products to replace them, they can absolutely do the same job as plastics. So the interesting thing for me is, lightweighting, food safety, heavier, we're not going to do any of those things. We're going to compromise on 1 or 2 shelf lives, amazingly. There will be a shelf life that changed. In our new store I showed you earlier in Liverpool, there are compromises actually on shelf life. The retailer has always driven massive shelf life on everything. Why? Because we don't want any waste. But you know what? When you start thinking about food waste, it could be actually we're causing the food waste because we're giving it too much shelf life, and people forget it's in the fridge, forget it's in the freezer, and then throw it away. So there's a massive balance here of which we can do. So we are not going to compromise food safety. We are not going to compromise anything about heavy weighting. We're going to make sure when we change our milk bottles to something else, they're absolutely fit for purpose. And the most important thing of the lot is we've got to make sure that doesn't cost anymore. That's my hardest job, our hardest job in this debate, is doing it at the same price. Because the economy is not driving really well. People spend money on food these days who can't afford to spend any more money on food. People have got the same food budget they had 10 years ago. So that is the massive balance we've got in moving to these new materials. They are available. We can have them today. And my note to the House is that we want choice. Consumers want choice. I'm listening to consumers telling me they don't want plastics. Thank you.
Amazing. Now, will the proposers can certainly ask a question. Who would like to ask that? And you need a mic this time. David.
Ian, I have a question for you. What do you pack your frozen peas in that's not a plastic bag?
So, several materials available. We've tested about 7 now. They're all still under test. At the moment, they're still in plastic, right? And they're still in plastic because they've got a 2-year shelf life on them. The alternatives I'm using right now don't give me a 2-year shelf life. Some of them we can talk about, some of them we can't because they're under test. But the main thing is, right this moment in time, I haven't got the shelf life that's last 2 years, because nobody would thank me, for instance, putting them into any material, whether that's a cellulose, it's not cellulose, but whether it's a cellulose, a PBS, whatever it may be, nobody would thank me if all the peas were left in the freezer and the bag had disappeared. So I've got a massive balance between the shelf life of the packaging that we're now going for against what we've always been used to. It's just an alternative.
No? Okay then. We are now going to go to the all-important middle batting order, which will, some people say, a very critical middle order batting for the current team. Margaret Bates. Is that on?
Bates. So debating's new for me. Right, number of things that I want to draw attention to. I think actually we need a fundamental review of where plastic is best. I think sometimes we find that glass is best or alternatives are best, but sometimes plastic's best. And we need to stop this jumping from one crisis to another. We need to be aware of what the impacts on transport are from using lightweight materials. I had someone in a radio interview who said this is ridiculous, we should just be able to do everything in glass and metal. Well, that would have significant environmental impacts. It's not just about the material and what we put in at the beginning. We also need to consider the end-of-life solutions. And we need to understand the role that consumers have in this. And I think sometimes when we're talking about producer responsibility, we give consumers a get-out-of-jail-free card, whereas we should be really considering what the consumer's role is, because without them, none of the other systems work. If you're thinking it's just the material, then think about this. 100% of local authorities intend to collect plastic bottles by the end of this year. So there's only 4 that don't, but yet we only have 59% recycling, the collection for recycling. For pots, tubs and trays, 80% of local authorities collect them, but only 33% collection rate. So we have the infrastructure, but people aren't doing it. They say they're confused. I think sometimes it's a fine line between confusion and can't be asked. Sorry, I know that's not very professorial, but you all know what I mean. And we need to think about that. We're very concerned about infrastructure in developing countries, and we've had Theresa May saying we should send plastics experts out to Africa. Africa doesn't need plastics experts. There's nothing wrong with the plastics. Africa needs waste management infrastructure. We need to consider what's happening. We need to have people having better understanding of what their end-of-life solutions are, what's happening. So there's no point having biodegradable stuff if you don't have food waste collection. We need to make sure that it's integrated and thought through. I think we'll see a big change in what we're calling plastics. I think in the very near future, we're going to see a big change from fossil-based plastics to plant-based plastics. I think we're going to see less complexity in the plastics that are used for packaging, and I hope we're going to see much better labelling. But what we have to do is, while we're going through that transition from fossil-based to plant-based, we have to manage it a heck of a lot better than it looks like we're currently doing, because all we seem to be doing now is adding to the confusion. That's me.
Thank you very much indeed. So, sorry.
I don't quite recognise the 9%, first of all. No, it's not. I've worked in the industry all my life, and so just give me a little space to reply. So I don't recognise the 9%. If you look at what's collected from the curb and that it is recycled, even the recycled content level is way above 10% on average. In terms of best practice, in terms of what gets collected for recycling, you've only got to look at Wales. These things in Wales, 74% of them get collected. So what does that leave? That leaves the balance that should be collected. Where are those used on the go? That's where we've got to concentrate to get the rest of those back, and then we'll be approaching that 100%. So even...
Hang on, no, please, Sean, can you just you've got to let him finish, sorry.
You know, I think you're confusing stats is all I would say, because I can see you shaking your head, but you know, I've been in this industry a long, long time. I talk to lots of waste management companies. I know what's going on. We want to improve the level of recycling within the UK. We're delighted that the government has responded to our call for consistent collection of plastics materials. That will boost it further, regardless of what level we say we're starting from.
15 seconds.
I am optimistic that we'll see not only the recovered material that we're currently getting from plastics that is diverted from landfill at its current level of 78% rise to best in class.
Perfect timing, thank you, Barry. Right, now we have the middle. Oh, you are in order, so if I may introduce Tony Breton from Novamont.
Hi, thank you, Martin. I'd just like to ask a bit of a bigger question, which is, what is this actually all about? Is it about the fish? It all started with the fish. Is it about climate change, consumerism, behavior change, so-called recycling, LCA, carbon, water, soil? Yes, it's all of these things, but above all, it's actually about money. Today's plastics industry is one of the many, many faces and fronts of the fossil fuel industry, the most subsidized industry on this planet. Subsidized not just in the multiple breaks it gets in order to produce its materials cheaply, subsidized in the fact that almost none of the externalities that's produced and associated with its products, they are accountable for. None of them. None of the externalities are actually paid for. So having lost the battle on renewables in terms of energy, renewable energy is taking off, the fossil fuel industry is facing a new challenge, plastics. The public have turned against plastics, and not in a good way for them. So what's there been in response? Massive investment in recycling, massive investment in new materials, redesign? No, massive investment in new capacity. There are millions of tons of new capacity coming on stream in North America as we speak, sitting here right now. The justification is fairly simple. Just-in-time model, consumerism, convenience, everything at minimal cost, and we can provide the solution today. And by the way, the LCA credentials are brilliant. Maybe this is true if you look at it in a pair of blinkers and don't ask the right questions about those LCAs. But LCA as a concept is pretty good, but its application can be highly questionable. And the questions start with the base data. The base data for the plastics LCAs all come from Plastics Europe. Plastics Europe, many years ago, went to their producer members and said, give us some data. Has anybody been back to Gazprom or to the Saudis and asked them recently, can we just come and have a look and reassess, look at your emissions, look at everything else you're chucking out? If you look at the production in the US from the fracking and from other extraction, they don't even bother to measure methane emissions anymore. No wonder their LCA numbers are looking so good. And if you look at something like deep water and the spillage there and all that toxicity, none of that is considered in any of the LCAs that everyone says, I've got an LCA, it's brilliant, plastic's the best thing forward. So no LCA considers unmanaged impact. So not just at the start of life, at the end of life. But didn't all this start with the fish and David Attenborough? All those 8 million tons in the sea? None of that is considered in an LCA. And let alone not an LCA, they're about sustainability. As a producer of alternative materials, I am asked on a daily basis, what about land use change? What about water? What about soil? What about humans? What about displacement? La, da, 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 da. Fine, come and ask me the questions. We've got all the answers for you. This is where we're at. This is our baseline. Ask the same questions to the fossil-based polymer producers. Tell you what, after 50 years, they still don't even have a single framework to do an assessment, let alone do a sustainability assessment. So we hear a lot of good promises about recycling society, but in my view, this is just systemic tinkering. What we need, and for sure this is the biggest challenge of all, is system reset. A system that works not just for us as humans and for the economy, but for the environment itself. We need dematerialization, new materials, reuse. And I repeat that word, reuse. You look at what we're doing here with the Plastics Pact, reuse is hardly even mentioned. And the reason reuse is not mentioned, it means less plastics production. We need assessment frameworks that take the broadest possible view and consider the consequential impacts. I was asked to speak at Chatham House about reinventing the plastic bottle. Plastic bottles, I don't know anything about plastic bottles. But then I thought, hang on a minute, what comes in plastic bottles? Water. Where's all the water come from? Where's all the food that we eat come from? It's all basically either filtered through or grown in the soil. Well, guess what? Our soils are in crises. So we need to do something about our soils as well. In the EU, we produce 100 million tonnes of bio-waste a year. And despite the fact it's a major contributor to climate change, when we try and do the right thing, we fail. So in the UK, when you do the composting and digestion, you are still allowed to spread 1,000 carrier bags worth of large microplastics per hectare to the soil. And guess where those microplastics are going to end up? They're going to end up in the water, they're going to end up in the sea, they're going to end up in the fish, and they're going to end up back in you. Sooner or later, So basically what we need as a society is...
I've got to stop you.
Oh.
And
Two lines.
2 lines. No, I'm sorry. It's got to be... Come on. We've got to be fair. I mean, don't look at me. It's like that. Right. And I will, it's a bit like the Chelsea manager, remind the team of the basic rules. Management's in charge. Right. Yeah, sorry about that. But, you know, when... Right, you're going to pose the question, but let them answer uninterrupted. Okay, not that you didn't, but it's just a reminder to everybody. So, do you have a question, please?
Just a brief one. I like the idea of your systemic change, but you're talking about a fundamental change in the behaviour of global citizens. Do you think that's realistic, or do you think there are other steps that would be more sensible first?
Is it realistic? It's realistic if the money's there. And the money is in the wrong place at the wrong time at the moment. Will it take time? Yes, it will take time, but we need fundamental change. Just look at agriculture. We need regenerative agriculture. That's going to take a long time to come through. But we need to start thinking about the change. We can't just say, as an example, chemical recycling. This is going to be the solution forever. So let's not bother changing our packaging formats, because maybe in 20 years' time, something might change. We need to bring those changes in now. And we can start small and go bigger. As an example, I would use Wales. Wales had ambition, and they've underpinned everything with sustainability assessment in their legislation, and that's how they move forward.
You have a minute left. You can use it whichever way you want.
Can I finish?
Yeah, finish it.
Go on, up to you.
Finish my talk?
Go on, up to you. It's your minute. Come on.
Okay, well,
you don't have to.
What we need is alternatives which are compatible with our planet's core processes, one of which is soil, and that, if you are able to step back and take the bigger view, is where the compostable alternative materials fit in.
Right, well done. So now we go back. Right. So, Gordon Bennett, right, this is difficult. With one hand. We are now going to get to the point where the proposers are going to field their last person, which I presume is you, Barry, on that basis, unless there's someone else lurking. Come on, up you get. Right, Barry Turner, British Plastics Federation.
Well, I'm not going to apologise for walking up here with this bottle. It's keeping me refreshed, hydrated, and I am going to recycle it. I'm not going to throw it into the ocean. So let's talk about what the real issue is here. As a society, I would agree, we need to change. We've got to reinvest in the right areas. We've got to make sure that the leakage that is happening in some parts of the world comes to an end. It's shameful. It's also shameful how we behave when we're out and about as a society. It's not acceptable to throw waste on the floor. It has to be recycled. It has to be recaptured. The industry has encompassed that and embraced that principle by pressing for the circular economy. We have pressed for consistent collection of all materials from the curb so that we get that material back and we put it back to work again. These are all the reasons I believe if we focus on the right solutions in terms of getting the material back, putting it back to use again, and making sure that we use the least resource possible. That's the challenge for the planet. In terms of the resources we use, there's no free lunch. If we move to another material, that requires resource. There is no free lunch here. We've got to cherish that resource and put it back to work. That's where we need to focus. There is no silver bullet here other than hard work and concentrating on getting that material back and putting it back to use. Am I up or have I got time?
You've got 3 minutes.
I've got 3 minutes. Well, I will use them then. I will give you some examples. In terms of the materials in use, we are still deforesting this planet at an alarming rate, at an accelerating rate. There is no free lunch. In terms of other materials, there has to be a supply of raw materials. We need to focus on those materials, putting them to use, and then getting them back and making sure they keep on turning around that cycle. And that's where new innovations like chemical recycling and other can make sure that we've got a comprehensive solution for all plastics in use. So we shouldn't be shying away from innovation. We shouldn't be shying away from the hard-to-do box, which is get those waste management infrastructures in place. Our industry as a whole has already committed $1.5 billion recently, announced this year, to help get that waste management infrastructure in place. Didn't have to do that. Governments in developing world could have taken that lead. We are going into that space to do our bit. So we are a responsible industry and we're doing our bit. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Right. So it now leads you to phrase a question, if you don't mind. So who's going to do that? Right.
I'll do it. Tom? Yeah, based on your responsibility there, Barry. You've known for at least 25 years of the issues that are being caused with plastics in the environment. But only now you're tinkering and doing something. Is there a reason why you didn't do anything, why you're not apologetic for what you've just let the planet happen? And at the same time, you say we need to recycle more. So can you tell me how many times that plastic bottle you've got there can go back to being a plastic bottle before it ends up as a park bench?
Right, that wasn't meant to be a speech, that was a question, so go for it. Sorry, one of you, anyway. Oh, sorry, you need the mic.
Several questions buried in there, aren't there?
Yeah, there are.
Well, you can do it between you. You can pass it on.
Am I doing this? Okay. Shall we start with the last one? I think the assessments, depending on what research and the quality of material and how you get it back, that plastic bottle can probably go round the cycles between 7 and 10 times. It can go round that cycle infinitely if you put it back into chemical recycling. In terms of how that compares with other materials, I'd say that compares quite favourably with materials in the mix. There is degradation that occurs in every recycling. There's resources used in every recycling chain. In terms of responsibility, should the industry have done something more? Perhaps governments in developing world should have done something more. People are being killed on a regular basis and suffering short lives simply because governments in developing worlds have embraced and welcomed in tourists but have not invested in infrastructure that comes with the demands that the tourists bring with them. Perhaps the industry could have done more. So I'm not saying it's totally blameless in this, but there are a number of actors that could have done more. And I would say that governments have a leading role to play in making sure proper waste management systems are in place to protect their population from disease and from contamination.
Margaret, you have 30 seconds.
Hindsight is a wonderful thing. I think we need to look at the best way to go forward rather than focus on the mistakes of the past, whether we're talking about plastics or any other environmental issue.
Thank you very much. Well, you've got 6 seconds if you want it. Don't want it, right, fine. On to the next one, please. And we have Sian Sutherland from A Plastic Planet, who is the final speaker against the motion.
Well, before I start, I want to ask you all to do one thing. Can anyone in the audience who has children, nieces or nephews, please put up their hand now. Just for 1 second, close your eyes and picture their faces right now. Remember those faces as this debate develops, because these are the faces that you need to explain our decisions to. Not your boss, not your employees, not your shareholders, definitely not your shareholders. The next generation who are already showing us that they care more about their future than we do. Around the same time that we landed on the moon, another miracle took place. We started to ramp up production of a completely miraculous material. We'd invented something really special, a material so clever it can be used for a myriad of things. A simple word describes it, plastic, but its uses and its indestructibility are stuff of legends. Fast forward to this century, and we have woken up to the terrible realization that we have mistreated our miracle material. Instead of treating it like gold, instead of putting it on a pedestal and respecting it, we've treated it like rubbish. Using it for momentary purposes like packaging, and then treating it like trash, throwing it in our land, our streets, and our oceans. But rather than truly realize our error and change, we decided we would try to recycle it, so we could continue our love affair and continue to misuse it in increasingly, rapidly increasing volumes. In fact, we're so addicted that the latest numbers state that 67% of our UK plastic waste is packaging, and we in the UK throw away 300 billion pieces of plastic every year. So let's have a reality check. 91% of the plastic ever made has never been recycled. Every piece of plastic ever made still exists on the planet today unless it's been burnt. 1 year's production of plastic bottles alone will stretch halfway to the sun. If you made all our plastic into Lego bricks, you could wrap the planet 16 times. All this noise, all this concern about plastic pollution has done nothing to slow down the acceleration in plastic production, now made even cheaper by fracking. We are forecast to be pumping out 3 times the volume of plastic by 2030 and 5 times by 2050. So by the time our kids are having kids, they will have triple the amount of plastic to deal with, on top of the billions of tons that we have already landed on them. Just how much downcycled carpet, just how many park benches do we need? Where do we think all this plastic is going to go? Well, I can tell you some of the places that we think it should go. Right now, with the China ban in place, in the relatively rich West, we're finding new places to send our plastic waste in the name of recycling. The latest places we found that we can persuade to take our rubbish are Myanmar and Mozambique. So now we send our trash to some of the poorest people on the planet. People who have nothing, who have an over 80% record of waste mismanagement, are having to deal with our dirt. When you next hear the words, we need to be careful about unintended consequences, remember this. Remember that right now we are sending our plastic waste to an intended consequence. People, this is my rubbish, this is your rubbish, this is happening in our name. Please let us not ever believe we can recycle our way out of this madness. I mentioned children at the beginning. If anyone here has kids, we are the lucky ones. We are perhaps the last generation that will not blame infertility on plastic toxicity. From the beginning of a plastic's life to the very fact that plastic life never ends, the chemicals used and created by this material are affecting the health of every living thing on the planet. I refer to the January 2019 report just published by CIEL, the Centre for International Environmental Law, whose client is the planet and humankind. These are lawyers. This is not the Daily Mail. Extensively backed by fact, not hype. And I quote, "The findings of this report are conclusive. Even with the limited data available, the toxic impacts of the plastic life cycle on human health are overwhelming."
That's it. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
If you use your, you're going to be asked a question, you can use it. Use the miniatures. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Right, now, would the proposers like to propose a question?
I too read that report that was published in January, and I was quite struck by the conclusion that much more research was needed before any real conclusions could be drawn. The reason why, because they drew together lots of research that was not properly peer-reviewed, pretty shallow, but we would certainly subscribe as an industry that more research is needed in that space. But we mustn't, but I'm just, my question
Barry,
is...
what's your challenge?
My challenge to you is, based on that conclusion, how you can leap to the conclusion that there's lots of risk to human beings at this point in time, based on that report.
Right,
Because
that's
what I saw in
right,
that report.
Right, yeah, you do.
I saw statements, but I saw conclusions as well.
Right, let's give you 2 minutes to respond.
Yes. Thank you, Barry, for giving me such a great question. There is little science. It's a little like whack-a-mole. Every single time a new health report comes out, Exeter University, wherever it comes from, bang, 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 it is whacked down by probably the lobbyists, probably the oil industry, forgive me. I don't know if anybody else in this audience feels that maybe there is a parallel here with the tobacco industry some years ago, with the asbestos industry some years ago. How much proof do we need when we know that endocrine disrupting chemicals are used to make our plastic work? How much more proof do we need?
Okay, anybody, do you want to make any other comments, or do you want to leave it there? You've got a minute. So you never want to waste, Ian. Okay, right. Thank you. Thank you. Wow. Well, I hope you appreciated that. I think we'll have a mid-applause. A mid-debate applause. Come on. Because that was quite a lot of effort there. Now, the next bit is really interesting because it's over to you. And we're going to have 15 minutes of questions from you with the answers, obviously. A plea, as I mentioned before, can we make them short questions, okay? If we can, not to make speeches from the floor. So who would like to ask a question? We have a gentleman over here. Oh, go on then. We'll include this in the 15 minutes because there's drinks later. Sorry, I should have said after this at 5 o'clock there are drinks. Sorry.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah. Loud and clear.
There seems to be one contradiction in the plastics argument. When we're talking about, first argument was that plastic prevents food waste, which I can understand. On the flip side of it, you were saying that bioplastics are the future. Now, where's bioplastics going to come from? You've got to grow plants in order to create bioplastic. So what are you doing there? You're taking land away from land that could be cultivated for food, for people who need the food. I mean, can you explain that one for me?
Okay. Which side are you taking?
The plastics.
Right, well, the first bit I said was that I think we need a very sensible debate about where plastics are appropriate and where what kind of plastic is most appropriate in what context. And also, the other thing I think we shouldn't lose sight of, it doesn't really matter if it's biodegradable, compostable or recyclable if you don't need it in the first place. So I think going back to that whole thing, we actually need to consider much more sensibly what we're doing. We generate an awful lot of waste materials, and there's a lot of evidence that those waste materials could be used into other packaging materials, whether they be plastic-like or fibre-like. So there's a lot of stuff out there we could look at. But I think before we look at alternatives to what they're made from, we should look at whether we need them in the first place.
Shall we ask Ian? I mean, I'm sure you've got an opinion on most things.
Of course, Martin. But I would say that, like everything, we've just done our produce store in Liverpool with no packaging at all. So do we need it? It's a good question. So that turns the plastic tap down straight away, and then you start looking for your alternatives. Do you need plastics in the first place? Well, no. In some cases you don't. There are alternatives. Of course, there are, as I told you before, price is an issue. Some of the other things are an issue around it. Functionality. But they're all things that we've got to turn the tap down. We have to stop this happening. So from my point of view, any alternatives are better than plastic.
Okay. You go on then, if we're going to come
Just
back.
quickly though, the other thing is we've been focusing very much on food. Of course, plastic packaging doesn't only go to food. If you're talking about, you know, what's better for a bleach or a household chemical, if you're going to use such things, which people do, than a plastic bottle, because you're not going to want to put it in glass, and you're not going to want to have a lid that a kid can open.
Right. I mean, if you want to make a statement quickly in support, or shall we go on to the next question? Up to you. Only trying to be... Move on. Right. Sian says move on. When she does, you move on. Right. We have a question here.
Sorry, the gentleman from Novamont is having a pop at the bottle being recycled between 7 and 10 times. What is your option to that bottle?
Did you get that? Recycle 7. What's your option for bottles? Yep.
Well, you can do a refill can, but as I said in my speech, bottles aren't my thing. And I would actually question whether a bottle could be recycled 7 times. It can be recycled 7 times in a lab, maybe once or twice in reality.
As a nation, how do we push this on? Because we're all drinking water out of a bottle here.
Well, there we go. Then we need.
I'm not aiming this at you. I'm just saying.
No, this is why we need water taps. We need reuse. We need all these other things to actually reduce demand. When I was young, which was probably before your time. We consumed, with the 70s, 1 million litres of water in bottles. Today, it's what, 3 billion litres. What's happened to the quality of our water? It's still the same. What's wrong with the tap?
Okay, can we pass the mic to the against team? Go on, let them have a... Anybody, you don't have to say it, you can... But I will let Ian, because he's desperate to make another statement. I'll leave it to you. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Just one quick one. It's the same with milk or anything, but it's the same. Fibre that we're using from trees and from forested trees, correctly harvested, those fibres used to be reused about 7 times. They can now be reused up to 15 times. So why are we not putting it in board, for instance? Good question. Does it need a liner at the moment? Well, in some cases, yes. So all the time we are working at different things to make sure that we can reuse it a lot more times.
Okay. The proposers, anything you want to add between you?
I go back to the principle there's no free lunch. As I mentioned it earlier, we should be looking at all alternatives and cherishing those resources and putting them back to use.
Okay, let's have another question, please, from the audience. We seem to be on this side. Is there anybody on this side? There is. Can we try it? Oh, God. Knowing him, I know it's going to be a short one, Keith.
Cost has been the key driver that's led us to export a massive amount of our stuff to those areas in the country where the 10 rivers are that cause all the plastic in the sea. Why do we not have a 5th consultation document saying we are going to take serious control of the massive tonnage of uncontrolled exported mixed waste that we currently send out of our country, and we have become entirely dependent upon it?
Okay, and I think thank you, David.
Keith, I quite agree.
Fair enough. It doesn't have to be long, and we asked for it short. Let's pass it to the other side. See if you can be shorter.
I'll be short. Again, it's down to money. Waste has shifted around the world for purely due to economic reasons. Sweden exports its waste so it can get more money in from Norway or from Leeds because it can burn it cheaper there. It's all about money.
Okay, does that answer your question? I'm sure it does. And we have a question down here. Very good. Sorry, I wasn't intentionally only looking left.
I was wondering, why is no one talking about the responsibility of the end consumer when it comes to collecting, sorting? Because if we think that we're going to ban plastic, is that suddenly going to stop people throwing away their waste?
Throwing away. You mean listen? Right.
I think Margaret did mention consumer responsibility in her thing, but I think you have a really valid point there, and it's one of my pet things that Barry's plastic water bottle that's been the cause of much interest so far is probably a very recognisable thing and a very recyclable item as well, and yet it also appears on the plastic packs list of problematic plastics. And why is that? Because it's very often found on beaches and on riverbanks and things like that. Not because it's not recyclable, but because people discard it irresponsibly. And to me, that's a travesty that needs to be addressed very urgently.
And
I thought I had addressed consumer responsibility, and honestly, if we're doing it quickly, you don't want me to start.
I think Sean was picking it up there.
I think it's very easy for us to point the finger at the consumer. And at the end of the day, I didn't choose to buy whatever I'm buying in that particular material. And yet somehow it's my responsibility, as soon as I've got it in my hand, to try and put it in the right bin. And then I find out most of it's going to be exported anyway. So I think ultimately, let's look at producer responsibility. Who are the people that choose this material in the first place? No, I agree with you. No, this should not be about guilt or blame. It should be about change.
All right. I'm sorry, we weren't able to hear your comment there.
But I will say that we as retailers have got a big job to play too. We've got to educate our customers to what they should be doing. We do need easy recycle schemes. We can't blame governments all the time, although we need a lot of help from them. We have to do education with people, and we have to make it really easy.
Well, no, sorry. Let's just give Margaret in the spirit of fairness.
Because the other thing is, it's not just about consumers, it's not just about producers, it's about the value chain. And we've been talking about Recoup and some of the other things, and I'm sure Ian, when he's looking at his plastic-free stuff, is working very much with the people who will look at it at the end of life as well. And that's what we need to do. We can't just focus on one bit of the value chain. We need to integrate it all, and we need to have incentives for doing the right thing rather than just letting people off.
Right. Now we'll have another question. No. Sorry. Come on. If you've got authority, you've got to use it. Bloody hell.
Reuse has been referred to a couple of times by both sides. Reuse of plastics has been referred to by both sides. Do you see reuse of plastics forming part of responsible use of plastics, and in which categories or products will it feature?
I think you're asking it to the proposers, aren't you? I saw it from your eyes, right.
I mean, we would reuse for everything, not just for plastics, and reuse has been vastly overlooked in pretty much every strategy, policy and application of every bit of resource or waste legislation that's hit this country, in my opinion.
Go on. Yeah.
And it's choice as well. You know, sort of at the end of the day, I do have reusable containers. Pluses and minuses. I came to the exhibition today. I had too much to carry, so I decided to hydrate myself. But I'm going to make sure I dispose of that responsibly.
Right, please.
He's out of order by carrying that around, by the way, because in all our head offices, everywhere we work, we got rid of all our cups. We carry one. We got rid of all our coffee cups. We carry one. We have saved an absolute phenomenal amount of waste going into the waste stream by being different. Everybody can do that today. That cup won't go out the side of the road. When I go to the motorway tonight and I see 100 cups, because I haven't got one. I've got one I'm using all the time. We've got a lot of responsibility to go for.
Okay. Very quick, Sean, and then we'll have another question. If that person can reveal themselves at the back there.
I just wanted to say, Refill, you are absolutely right. This is the year that Refill will have its moment in a modern, cool way, not in a kind of crunchy granola forest floor way. And I think when we see in May, when the TerraCycle loop experiment first comes out, and let's remember, 8 out of 10 of the world's biggest FMCG companies are putting products into loop. And that's going to make a massive difference because we're talking about durable, permanent packaging.
Right. Question from the man with the white shirt. I've always wanted to say that.
Question is, how do you plan to cover for the deficit in the cost? So, for example, PET bottles, PET trays, HD milk bottles, they've all got a value upward of £150 a tonne, for example. Your alternatives are no doubt going to have a gate fee and a cost of disposal, which is going to have huge commercial implications. What's your plan for dealing with that?
And who do you want to answer that? Just tell us who you want to answer that on the team.
Someone on the left.
Okay, so cost is really important. We've already discussed it. The cost of alternatives to all these materials are 3 times plus. If you saw my presentation earlier, I'm happy to share costs. They're 3 times plus. Some of them are 10 times. One material I've got that dissolves in water is 16 times more expensive. So how am I going to get over that? I'm going to work really closely with the producers. I'm going to test. I'm going to make sure that I drag other people along with me, and bit by bit that price will come down. Just as I did with plastics, moving them out of cellulose that I was in the co-op in the 70s and 80s into plastics. I did all that. I've done the lightweighting of plastics. I've gone as far as I can go. I'm now that's not even on my portfolio anymore. So I will find that alternative. I will work really close with people, and sometimes we'll take a hit. We've taken a hit on a lot of things. We continue as we drive to turn the tap down. So you've got to look at the costs, of course, they're critical, but there are always ways around it, across it, and over it. And if you don't think you can do that, then you're in deep trouble, because it's just the same as when we went into plastics 40 or 50 years ago. Exactly the same. The alternatives were more expensive then.
Okay, can we pass it over?
Just one tiny thing. What is the true cost of plastic? I don't think anybody can actually put a number on it now.
Well, we're not going to ask the gentleman at the back to answer that, but we are going to pass the mic over here.
Or any other material.
But in terms of cost, I think there's one thing that we should remind ourselves of. The reason quite often materials are cost effective is because they use very little resources in their manufacture, and they have low impacts in that regard. What we're talking about in the whole debate about plastics is what happens to them at the end of their life and making sure they end up in the right place. And I really do think we need to remember what the value of plastics is all about. It's very resource efficient. We need to get it back and put it back to work again.
Okay, I mean, that really is the end of the questions. So, I mean, that was fantastic. So thank you for your help. The next stage is our proposers will, whoever between you is going to stand up and speak for 2 minutes and tell us, just wrap the whole thing together and absolutely make the sale. There is this bit. You have to do you see, when I was at Borstal, this is how we did it. Now, who would like to just close the sale on your behalf? Come on. A quick 2 minutes. Oh, actually, the other side are equally caught in the headlights as well, so that's good news. Hmm? By hand or machine, right.
So as clearly evidenced, none of us were really expecting to do this. And so I'm going to go back to what we said at the beginning. I know we're looking at plastics now, but I think we should be careful not to just demonize plastics. We need to look at using the right material in the right place. We need to review how we are using materials, and we need government to hopefully to take a lead. I would like to see greater application of responsibility and incentives. But we also need to be very careful that when we move to alternative materials, that we don't move to alternative problems. So we need to make sure that we understand what the impacts of what we're doing are and how we'll move them forward. I think we will change, but that change needs to be sensible and thought out. And I think at the moment we're jumping from one crisis to another.
Thank you, Margaret. And finally, making the case and summing it up in 2 minutes. I repeat, 2 minutes. Tony, thank you.
I will actually agree with Margaret. We do need to look at the full case on alternatives. But in order to have a baseline on the alternatives, you need to look at the full case of what we're dealing with now. I'm going to repeat myself. There are none of the externalities of what the current system for plastics are considered. None of the economics is really true. There is no true costing to plastics. If you took out the subsidies for the fossil fuel industry, that gentleman there that said plastics are worth 150 quid a tonne, he'd probably be right. He'd probably be worth 700 quid a tonne because all of a sudden the economics shoot up and they don't become economically viable anymore. So what we actually need to do is relook at the system and look at systems which we actually want. Thank you.
Wow. Right, now in my day you'd stick your hand up and vote, but apparently technology is overtaking us. And this gentleman here is putting in something, I think it's called a memory stick from apparently. And you're going to vote interactively. You've got to get your phones out. Does anybody have a mobile phone? Right, you've all got mobile phones. Do they have, they can just do it without any, so you put the code in. Shall I read that? www. You better do it yourselves, otherwise you lose 3 votes. I mean, sorry. God, bloody hell. If anybody tells, just shout out if you're finding this difficult. As chairman, I'm so excuse this, it's wonderful. Got drinks, got that, right. Oh, people are voting, so they're doing. Can they only vote once, by the way, just out of interest, or can they fiddle it? Are we in a, you know? Oh, stop. That was to tell me the 50, yeah. No, it wasn't actually, that was the thing. Did you do it at the beginning? No, we didn't do it at the beginning. I cocked up because it wasn't working. And I did. We should have voted at the beginning, but you know what? Life's too short, and the worst comes to the worst, you stick your hands up. Has everybody had a chance to do this? It's amazing. What's it? Oh, hang on, don't say.
Will always be fundamental to everyday life, so they're agreeing.
Yeah. Tell me when they've got a few more. Is this a vote or a referendum? It's a very interesting point, actually, because if it's a referendum, we'll do it again. Now, boom, boom.
Give it another 10 seconds.
Another 10 seconds. No pressure. Okay. Everybody okay? Shout ready if you're done. Ready. Right. Okay. There is the response. Well, first of all, before reading that, I'm going to say I think all of you did an absolutely brilliant job. One of you was thrust in at the very, very last moment. And I think it's quite a difficult thing to do, and keeping to the time and so on. I think you were absolutely all magnificent. It occurred to me halfway through, I thought, you know, what a brilliant panel we've actually got here. So let's give them a congratulations first. And then the result is, this House believes that plastic packaging will always be fundamental to our everyday lives. Agree 61%, disagree 38%. Now, sorry, we shouldn't even applaud that or whatever, because that is just well done to both teams. I think this is something we keep to ourselves. I think we had a brilliant time, and I hope you absolutely 100% enjoyed it.